You earn more than most people you know. Your account balance has 6 figures. On paper, you are winning. But there is this quiet tension you cannot explain. You check your balance, see $200,000, and instead of relief, you feel something closer to vertigo. Because part of you knows that number should feel like progress, and it does, but another part of you has already done the math in your head and realized that $200,000 is not freedom, it is not security, it is not even close to enough. And now you are stuck in this strange middle ground where you have too much to feel broke, but not nearly enough to feel safe. Most people who hit $200,000 respond to that feeling by doing exactly what got them there. They keep grinding, they keep saving the same percentage, they keep white-knuckling their way through another decade, assuming the path to $1 million is just the same painful road 5 times longer. They are wrong, and that misunderstanding is quietly the most expensive mistake in personal finance. What I need to show you today is a mathematical shift that happens at $200,000, one that most people walk right past without ever noticing. Once you see it, the entire way you think about money changes. The illusion. Here is the belief almost everyone carries, usually without questioning it. Wealth building is linear. You save a fixed amount each year, the pile grows at a steady pace, and eventually, after enough decades of discipline, you arrive at a number that means something. The assumption is that the effort required to go from 200,000 to 400,000 is roughly the same effort it took to go from 0 to 200,000. Just keep doing what you have been doing. Stay the course, be patient. It sounds reasonable, it feels true, and it is almost entirely wrong. Because the journey to 200,000 is fundamentally different from the journey after it. Getting to 200,000 is a story about labor, your income minus your expenses, deposited month after month into an account that grows painfully slowly. You fought for every dollar in that balance. You skipped upgrades your peers were enjoying. You lived below your means for years while compounding did almost nothing visible for you. And so you internalized a model of wealth building that is entirely based on effort. More discipline equals more wealth. More sacrifice equals more progress. That model was accurate when your balance was small. It is dangerously incomplete now. Because something has shifted in the math, and if you do not recognize that shift, you will spend the next 10 years working far harder than you need to, while making decisions that quietly cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. The mechanism. Let me make this concrete. Say you earn $80,000 a year, and you save 20%. That's $16,000 annually going into investments. That's serious discipline. Most people never get anywhere close to that savings rate. Now, $200,000 invested at an average return of 8% generates roughly $16,000 a year in growth. Pause on that for a moment. Your money is now producing the same annual contribution that your labor produces. The thing you spent a decade building through sheer force of will, your portfolio can now match without you doing anything at all. This is the inflection point. This is where the entire mechanics of wealth building undergo a phase change. Before this threshold, your savings drive your net worth. After this threshold, your investment returns begin to drive it, and the gap between those two forces only widens with time. Most people cross this line and don't even notice. They are still operating with the old mental model, the one that says their paycheck is the engine of their wealth. But the engine has already changed. The question is whether they change with it. Here's where it gets interesting. When your balance is $20,000, the return on that money is roughly $1,600 a year. Helpful, but not meaningful. Your salary dwarfs it. A $10,000 raise at that stage is transformational. It's a 50% increase in what you can save. But at $200,000, a 5% improvement in your portfolio return generates $10,000 annually, the same impact as that raise, except you didn't have to negotiate for it, change jobs, or take on more responsibility. You just had to make a smarter allocation decision. This is the shift most people never make. They keep pouring energy into optimizing their income while ignoring the fact that their portfolio decisions now carry equal or greater weight. Career optimization matters, but at this level, investment optimization matters just as much, and soon it will matter more. The compounding curve. Let me walk through the numbers so you can feel this, not just understand it. You are 35 years old. You have $200,000 invested. You continue contributing $16,000 a year from your salary, and your portfolio earns 8% annually. Year 1, your portfolio grows to $232,000, $16,000 from your contributions, $16,000 from returns. A perfect split. Your money matched you dollar for dollar. Year 5, you are at $314,000. Still feels incremental. You are doing the math in your head and it does not feel fast enough. Year 10, you cross $518,000. And here's what matters. Of the $318,000 in growth over that decade, only $160,000 came from your savings. The other $158,000 came from compounding. Your money quietly outpaced you. Year 15, $821,000. Year 20, $1.3 million. And of that total growth from your original $200,000, over $700,000 came from compound returns, not from your contributions, not from your labor, from mathematics running uninterrupted. Your money did most of the work, you just had to let it. And that phrase, let it, is doing more work in that sentence than it appears, because letting compounding run is not passive. It is one of the hardest things you will ever do with money. It requires you to sit still while markets drop, while friends get rich faster, while every instinct tells you to do something. Letting it run is an act of discipline that most people cannot sustain. The identity shift. Here is the psychological transformation that has to happen, and it is more difficult than any savings plan. Up until $200,000, you were a saver. Your identity was built around discipline, frugality, and the ability to delay gratification. That identity served you. It got you here. But from this point forward, you need to become something different. You need to become an allocator, someone whose primary financial skill is not squeezing dollars out of a paycheck, but deciding where capital goes and protecting the conditions that allow compounding to function. These are different skill sets. A saver asks, how can I spend less? An allocator asks, where does this capital generate the highest long-term return? A saver measures progress by the size of their next deposit. An allocator measures progress by the growth rate of the entire portfolio. A saver worries about earning more. An allocator worries about interrupting the machine. And that word, interrupting, is the key to everything that follows. Escalation. The real risks at this level. When your portfolio was $50,000, a mistake cost you months. When your portfolio is $200,000, the same category of mistake costs you years, not because the percentage loss is different, but because the compounding you destroy at this level was worth exponentially more. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. You are at $200,000 and the market drops 25%. You are now looking at $150,000. That $50,000 decline took months to happen and years to build. It feels visceral. It feels like your discipline was pointless, and every instinct is screaming at you to sell, to stop the bleeding, to protect what is left. So you do. You move to cash. You wait for things to stabilize. Except the market recovers faster than you expected, By the time you feel comfortable enough to reinvest, it's already back where it was. You missed the rebound. You locked in the loss, and instead of being at 200,000 on a trajectory toward millions, you are at 150,000, restarting a process that was already working. That one emotional decision didn't just cost you $50,000. It cost you the compounded future of that $50,000. Over 20 years, that single moment of panic could translate into $200,000 or more in lost wealth. This is what people do not grasp about this level. The stakes have changed. The consequences compound. Every decision you make, or fail to make, echoes forward through decades of returns. And selling during a downturn is only one version of the interruption. There are others that are more subtle and almost more dangerous because they don't feel like mistakes when you're making them.
The lifestyle trap. Here is the decision that quietly derails more people at 200,000 than any market crash. They treat it as permission. You have been disciplined for a decade. You delayed gratification while your peers were upgrading. And now, for the first time, you have a balance that feels substantial. You feel like you have earned the right to breathe. So you upgrade. A nicer car, a bigger apartment, the vacation you have been postponing. And in isolation, each of these decisions seems reasonable. You can afford it. You deserve it. Life is not just about accumulation. All of that is true. But here's what nobody calculates in the moment. Every dollar you remove from compounding at 200,000 is not a dollar. It is $4 or $5 by the time you are 55. That $40,000 car you buy with cash is not a $40,000 decision. It is a $160,000 decision when you account for 20 years of compounded growth you just forfeited. That does not mean you should never spend money. It means you should know the real price of what you are buying. Most people make spending decisions based on the sticker price. At this level, the sticker price is a fraction of the actual cost. And the insidious part is that lifestyle inflation does not announce itself. It creeps. A slightly nicer dinner habit, a marginally more expensive neighborhood, a subscription here, an upgrade there, each one trivial in isolation. Collectively, they can drain tens of thousands a year from your compounding base, and you will barely notice until the damage is done. The people who turn 200,000 into 2 or 3 million are not the ones who denied themselves everything. They are the ones who understood the math well enough to make conscious trade-offs instead of unconscious ones. The comparison trap. There's another psychological threat at this level that almost nobody talks about, and it is more destructive than lifestyle inflation. Comparison. You have $200,000 growing steadily in index funds. The math is working, the trajectory is clear, and then someone you know makes $200,000 in 6 months on a real estate deal, or crypto, or a startup. And suddenly, your disciplined, boring, mathematically sound strategy feels painfully slow. So you start looking for shortcuts. You put $50,000 into something you do not fully understand because the potential return is exciting. Maybe it works. Usually it does not. And when it does not, you have just cut your compounding base from 200,000 to 150,000. You have set yourself back years trying to accelerate a process that was already accelerating on its own. Here's the quiet truth about the people who turned 200,000 into millions. They were not the ones who found the clever shortcut. They were the ones who stayed boring, who kept contributing, who did not panic sell, who did not chase the thing that sounded faster, who let the math do what math does when you give it time and consistency. Boring at this level is not a failure of ambition. It's a strategy, and it's the one with the highest probability of working. The reframe. From income to optionality. Now here's where I want to shift how you think about this entirely. Most financial advice at this stage focuses on the destination, how to get to $1 million, how to retire early, how to hit some number that's supposed to mean security. But the real value of $200,000 is not what it becomes in 20 years. It's what it does for you right now. When you have $200,000 invested and protected, something changes in how you move through the world. You stop operating from desperation. If your job becomes toxic, you don't have to tolerate it. If an opportunity requires a few months without income, you can take it. If a negotiation requires you to walk away, you actually can. That's optionality, and optionality is worth more than almost any purchase you could make. Think about what it means to negotiate from a position where you genuinely do not need the outcome. You ask for more. You hold firmer. You are willing to wait. And people on the other side of the table sense it. They sense that you are not desperate. And that changes the offers you receive, the respect you are given, and the opportunities that find you. But here's the condition. That only works if the $200,000 is still there. If you spent it on upgrades, you're negotiating from the same position of quiet desperation as everyone else. The power was never in the money itself. It was in the optionality the money created. And optionality only exists if the capital is intact. This is the reframe. Stop asking, how do I earn more? Start asking, how do I build optionality? Because optionality compounds too. Better decisions lead to better positions. Better positions lead to better decisions. And the foundation of that entire cycle is a capital base you refuse to touch.
Strategic principles. So what does this look like in practice? Not as a budget, not as a step-by-step plan, but as a set of principles that protect the compounding machine you have built. First, widen the gap between what you earn and what you need. Not by earning more, although that helps, but by keeping your required lifestyle as low as you can tolerate without it feeling like punishment. The wider that gap, the more fuel you are feeding the machine, and the less vulnerable you are to disruption. Second, protect the base. This is not about never spending money. It is about understanding that the first $200,000 of your invested capital is doing more work than anything you will add later. That base is the engine, guarded accordingly. Third, build months, not walls. Your goal is not to accumulate money for the sake of a number. It is to accumulate months of runway, months where you can make decisions without financial pressure. The more months you have, the better your decisions become across every area of your life. Fourth, detach your identity from your income. If you define yourself by what you earn, you will always need to earn more, and that need will drive you to spend in ways that signal your earning power to others. The people who build real wealth are the ones whose spending has almost no correlation with their income. Their identity is not tied to consumption. Fifth, optimize for the portfolio, not the paycheck. At $200,000, your investment decisions carry as much weight as your career decisions. Treat them with the same seriousness. A 1% improvement in your average annual return across a $200,000 portfolio over 20 years is worth tens of thousands of dollars. That is worth your attention. The long view. Here is what I want you to sit with. The path from $200,000 to $2 million is not 5 times harder than the path from 0 to $200,000. It is easier, meaningfully easier, because the math has changed. The returns compound on top of returns. The engine is running. The trajectory is non-linear. But only if you do not sabotage it. Only if you keep contributing even when the progress feels slow. Only if you stay invested through the drops that feel like they are erasing everything. Only if you resist the impulse to reward yourself by draining the machine. Only if you recognize that $200,000 was never the finish line. It was the inflection point, the moment the math tipped in your favor, the moment your money started working as hard as you do. What you do in the next 5 to 10 years with that understanding will determine whether you end up with a comfortable retirement or something that changes the trajectory of your entire family. Not because you worked harder than everyone else, but because you understood what was actually happening at $200,000 and you made the decision to protect it. The compounding you cannot see yet is already happening beneath the surface. Every month you leave it alone, the curve steepens. Every year you let it run, the gap between your contributions and your returns widens. And at some point, that gap becomes so large that your portfolio grows more in a single year than you could save in 5. That is not speculation. That is arithmetic, and it is already in motion. 20 years from now, when the portfolio reads a number that would seem absurd to you today, you will trace it back to a decision. Not a decision to earn more, not a decision to find some brilliant investment, a decision to understand what $200,000 actually was and to give the math the time it needed. That is the decision in front of you right now.